Thanks so much for watching our show. We really appreciate the support. It costs a lot to produce, so we're asking for donations and pledges here on Patreon. Thanks again. Welcome back to See It and Feel It with Dr. Brett. So I make this joke that, in 3 or 4 years, we're probably going to see some, a third year and one of them is going to be green or something. And it's really my playful way. It's my playful way of saying, look, we don't know. So please just at least, I like the truth. I like it when people treat us like adults and, just say, look, we think it's safe and we would like everybody to get vaccinated, but there's no way we're going to know for sure. I would love that. Some honesty.
What you just said is so great. We're all adults, but
right.
I was listening to was NPR, and they were saying, here's what you can, new CDC guidelines on what you can and cannot do if you get the vaccine. And they're basically telling you like who you're allowed to hang out with. And I'm like, so does everyone just kind of devolved into a fifth grader? Not even a fifth grader. I should not insult 10-year-olds like that. But everyone's like has lost the capacity to make decisions for themselves.
Yeah, it's a little frightening that way about how like you're
just handing off responsibility. Oh, this is what the doctor said.
Well, the part that is a little bit, distressing, whatever, disturbing or disconcerting, whatever that word is. Like it's like, the fact that like some of the so-called experts have said, just because you have the vaccine, you still have to wear masks all the time and so on, right? So it seems like that some people don't think the vaccine is even enough for you to sort of resume a normal life. You still have to mask up everywhere. Well, and some of them even recommend double mask, but what is the,
double mask.
Yeah, or like, like goggles and so on.
Get me started on that.
Yeah, so I think common sense there's an element of common sense that, is missing. I think, obviously it's a good common sense to wash your hands. Right? A lot of people don't do that,
That's
right?
That's
a habit.
We had to wait till a global pandemic to tell people to wash their hands properly.
Right. And then I think, some other common sense is prior to this pandemic, people would just show up sick in your face all the time. So I think that's going to be a long-term positive.
I think that's what gets me the most. I go to places, like I was at a beach restaurant the other day and literally open air, all 3 directions. And they wanted me to put a mask at the counter to order. And I'm like, there's literally someone sitting here and here. And we just came from the beach. And I'm like, what do you?
No, and there's an incredible amount of
the
fear,
sense?
conformity, and common sense. So sometimes they're opposites.
Take it off to eat anyway. Yeah. And we're outside.
No, I know. I mean, that's the part that, sometimes feels like lunacy, but it's fear, right? It's like, and conformity, right? We were having this discussion, right? When is it fear? When is it conformity? When is it control? It's tricky, right? You want to do the right thing. If you're like a public health official, they let's just say most really want to do the right thing. Not all, because some people, have their own agendas, no matter where they are. We've lived enough life to know that, right? But let's just say most want to do the right thing. Well, what is the right thing, right? It really depends on your culture. I mean, I tell people around sexuality, right, a couple thousand years ago, what was homosexuality? If you're in Greece,
depends where you were.
It depends on your culture, right? Depends, right? So we're in Florida. It's a little bit more like, I call it balanced, but some people from the Northeast would say, it's like, too open or too conservative or whatever that is.
People aren't being safe, or people are, they're not being, concerned for their health. That's what people will say.
And
but
that's not agree. That's not true at all, because we've been living here, and basically, if some people are ultra fearful and ultra safe, and some people are irresponsible, and that's the case pretty much everywhere. And then there's a continuum in between, right?
But that was my point with the story. It's like, guys, I'm not sick. Why this mask business, and I'm not sick, but it's that common sense, because most people don't wash their hands or will sneeze on people and stuff like that.
I think one of the stats I read, and I don't have this one precise, but it's like, if you are not symptomatic, if you have COVID and you have no symptoms, I think there's like a less than 2%, but maybe less than 1% chance of transmission.
Right.
This is not you know, if you're not symptomatic, this is not something you're
Well, yeah.
giving to somebody
Let's-
automatically in
yeah.
any way whatsoever.
If you think
Right.
about it, like if you're not showing symptoms, so you're not coughing, you're not sneezing,
Hmm.
how are you giving it to someone if you're not coughing on them?
Yeah, well,
You don't
there's a
have
thing
symptoms,
called
like-
a viral load, right 24 hours before you actually come down with symptoms, where the virus sheds, so to speak.
Right.
So there is some ability to transmit, and maybe a lot in that little 24-hour gap. But you would have to hit somebody in that 24-hour gap, be close to them, right?
Very close.
Probably
like,
inside.
breathing down their
Yeah, probably
throat.
inside. Yeah, exactly. Not outside, right? So, right, if you're outside, you know, 3 or 4 feet, not 6 feet away from somebody that has no symptoms, like, I mean, common sense says, you know,
Common sense.
like you're probably fine.
Oh,
like,
that-
90, you know.
They have to write it now that you
Yeah.
shouldn't swim with a mask on because people are swimming with masks on. And
Well, you see people
what
in the
happens then?
car
You breathe in,
by
you breathe in
themselves.
water.
Well, you see people in the car by themselves with the mask on, right? So that's like swimming with a mask on. It's like being in a car by yourself with a mask
It's
on.
like waterboarding yourself.
Right.
That's like
water.
you're literally like.
Yeah. I mean, so this sort of fear, but fear interferes with common sense, right? The more scared people are, the less they behave in a sort of common sense way. One other stat that I do know that we read, I think it's from the WHO, but it basically said that 18% of people that are living with somebody who has symptoms, who has the, you know, is sick, it's only 18% that are going to get it. So I know
So it's
3 or
definitely not
4
that
people
contagious.
whose partners had COVID. They lived with them, took care of them, and did not get
They're in
it
the
because
same
it's
house all
only
the time.
yeah
I
because
know.
it's only 18%.
Same here.
And so what does that tell you? That
It's
tells
not
you
that
your immune
contagious.
system is the biggest chunk of this whole thing. And if you look at what's occurred over the past 12 months, there's very few discussions around your immune system and building your immunity. Very few.
Why is
There's
that?
all about masks and social distancing and whatever, and not, hey, let's reduce fear because that right is going to help your immunity.
But you can't sell that.
No, it's hard to sell. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Let's build your immune system. I mean, you can sell it. I mean, it's, but you know, which vitamins are you taking? Let's get
I
some
was going to say
sleep.
vitamin
Let's
D.
sleep.
Sunlight and vitamin D. That's
Sunlight.
something that's not being talked about enough. Like I remember there was what was the controversial drug that they use with zinc? The one that-
Erythromycin.
Yeah.
No, zinc,
you don't even have
erythromycin,
to go
and then
that far. You
hydrochloroquine.
don't have to go that far.
But
Like you just said,
ivermectin-
sleep, sunlight, fresh air. You know, all these things
Yeah.
work wonders on your immune system.
Yeah, and the other part that's challenging is a lot of people have been disrupted economically, and that, you know, the more that gets disrupted, the more it messes
Stress.
with your immune system, right? Because you have
Stress.
sleep and stress issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's not a ton of talk about that. There's some, but it seems like the so-called health experts really aren't addressing mental, emotional, and spiritual, you know, side effects here, right? They're doing a lot of like, you know, sick, you know, virus, dying, whatever, symptoms. And again, some people have gotten very sick and some people have died. And, you know, I know several people, right? So
Right.
it's obviously tricky, but we are trying to, you and I at least, are trying to like minimize fear, reduce fear, help
Fear
people.
doesn't help.
How does fear, right?
Fear doesn't help anyone.
Suppresses immunity. One more time. I'm going to say this over and over. The more fear you run, the more you're suppressing the immune function, the more susceptible you are, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so I think by September, though, I think we're going to be, I'm positive, I think we're going to largely be on the other side of this thing.
All
That's
right,
what
bets
my-
for September.
Yeah, my gut says, it's been saying that all along based on history, not just the rushing of the vaccines or whatever, you know, not this huge push for vaccines. Just because these viruses tend to burn through the population, right? It's like, again, the exposure rate is probably 10 times what the actual case rate is.
Right, right.
So,
You can't really, right.
you know, and we're not getting antibody tests, right? You know, most people are not. Very few people, maybe in college or a pro environment, you know, sports-wise or whatever, but how many people are getting antibody tests? Not many. How many tests have you had just because you flew?
Only that
Or you were
one.
forced
Only that
when
one.
you were coming back into the United States,
That's right.
right? You know, so if you're in a university, it's easy to get a test. They're being forced to take tests every week or every 2 weeks or twice a week, depending on the
Oh
school.
man,
And
that's
so it's
wild.
set up for them.
Most
And maybe certain
universities-
businesses. What's
Most
that?
universities are doing
At
that.
least,
For
yeah, a lot
sport?
of the
Is
ones
that
that
just with sports.
not just sports. Some of them are required for,
Wow.
their student population, depending on the Ivies are pretty intense about it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it depends which school. But in general, we're trying to stay out of fear here, right? I mean, that's our goal, is to, live with a ton of common sense, stay out of fear. Now it's weird if you cough, like a normal cough now is
You
like,
can't cough anymore.
no,
like
it's
in public,
embarrassing,
you're
it's uncomfortable.
impe-
It's really like it's
crazy.
scary to
Yeah.
if I sneeze now, I'm
You
like,
get
oh
caught-
my
you
God.
Or kids cough in class, they get suspended. They have to quarantine for 2 weeks and get tested.
I hope that
It's like
it's
the whole
super-
class like
Yeah, well, that's
crazy.
fear again, right?
Yeah.
So,
can't live like that. It's like, oh man.
no. What else are you curious about while the two of us are back on camera here?
All right, so we bet for September. You want to put 0.0001 Bitcoin on it?
That's funny. I own I think 0.02 Bitcoin.
Nice. That's pretty. That's worth
Yeah,
something.
I'm in the game, right? I like to be in the game, whatever the game is.
Whatever the
Right.
game is.
I played golf yesterday for the first time in 8 weeks. I was all braced up and everything because I've had a couple injuries, but I was in the game. I wasn't very good because it's been 8 weeks, and I'm, I found it's very hard to brace up your, the grip hand and then be able to play. It's like,
Man, you need
just
your
too
wrist,
much.
right? You need your wrist.
yeah, the right hand that I broke a year ago, I can do, play, because it's not directly, I can play with a wrist guard, but the left one where I shish kebabbed I filleted my palm, this one's on me or whatever. That 8 weeks later still sore, so I wasn't quite there yet. But it's nice to the metaphor is be in the game, right? You're back in the game, it always feels good. And we're in the game of life, right? We have been, right?
Game
You've
of
been
life.
living, right? We've been living relatively full. Just meet a little less people, right? It's a little less,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Be a little safer, meet a little less people. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Been
Wash
doing
your
things
hands
differently.
more, right?
Been
And
home a
then,
lot more.
the common sense thing is, again, why do you, in the past, people would show up sick all the time at work.
Yeah.
That is just, when I look back on it,
That's the thing that gets me because I
Yeah.
forget my mask a lot, and it's
Yeah.
like if I wasn't sick, I wouldn't go out. If I was sick, I wouldn't go out in the first place.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. They don't have to hassle me about putting this thing on my face. I'm not sick. You don't have to worry.
well, some people
But
are really-
but that's the whole thing. Like now you have to get a test to show that you're not sick. Like it's a whole
Well,
thing.
the other
It's a whole
thing
game.
is the other main theme from my perspective is this intense sort of singular focus on COVID is very myopic in some ways, because now you have cancer, heart disease, car accidents, suicides, homicides, right? Depression, anxiety, and so on. You have all these issues that are really significant,
Yeah.
that have been exacerbated in some ways, right? And what do we, and all we're doing is this myopic focus on, a flu virus that is much more dangerous for 65 and over with comorbidity, with other issues. But for under 65, it literally has in some ways it's less dangerous than a regular flu, regular coronavirus. That we will find out for certain.
All right.
All right. Hey, I'm Dr. Brad. I'm here with Jamal Hayes, and we did a COVID discussion. I didn't even know we were doing COVID today.
Turn into COVID.
But a year later, this is where we're at. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for watching See It and Feel It with me, Dr. Brett. If you enjoyed this video, remember to like, subscribe, or share it with a friend.